Welcome back to Algebra 2, Chapter 7, Section 3 in this book. We're talking about power functions and function operations. So I'm using the curvy F for function because I'm cool like that. Alright, so they love these questions in college. These are college questions when you take college algebra, which you will be ready for after Algebra 1. You can take pre-calculus if you want to in high school after Algebra 1. Algebra 2, I'm thinking ahead. You can take pre-calculus if you want to in high school, but you can, as soon as you finish Algebra 2, go straight to dual enrollment, and you can get college credit and high school credit for college algebra, and then then you'll be ready for college pre-calculus. So I really encourage that because you're ready for it and you might start forgetting. Alright, so what does this mean? Okay, remember we said that you can have on your calculator y1, y2, y3, but you could also, if it's a function, use function notation. That f of x is like y1, g of x y2, and h of x y3, and I've never seen I of x. I don't think. Maybe I have. I've forgotten a lot. Okay, and what you do with these is you can add them, subtract them, multiply, divide them, and substitute them for x. And that doesn't make sense. The examples will make it clear. Okay, so you'll be given something like this. F of x equals 2x to the 1/2. And g of x equals negative 6x to the 1/2. And then for A, they'll tell us to add them. And for B, they'll tell us to subtract them. And in college, for C, then you multiply them. And D, then you divide them. And then E, you take one to another exponent of one and stuff like that. It's just messing with equations. Alright, so how you do it is you sing the song, substitute, okay, and then where it is f of x, we write what it equals, and then where g of x is, we write what that equals, and then we do the math. And remember, these are like units, so 2 times x to the 1/2 minus 6x to the 1/2 is negative 4x to the 1/2. And then they wanted us to subtract them. But remember, two negatives make a positive, so it's 2 plus 6 is 8x to the 1/2. And that's all they want. Okay? Sometimes you multiply them. This time we're given f of x equals 3x and g of x equals x to the 1/4. And first they want us to multiply. So we just sing substitute. And for f of x we write 3x. And for g of x we write x to the 1/4. And then we multiply them. 3 times 1 is 3, and this x is the same thing as x to the 1th power, it's not really a word, which is the same thing as 4/4, right? I want to add them together, and fractions need to have the same denominator to be added. So 4/4 plus 1/4 is 5/4. Oh, I meant to be using my green one, so you can see what I'm doing here. Alright, this time they want us to divide them. So we're going to do 3x divided by x to the 4th, but I changed that x to the 1 power to 4/4, so I could cancel out one of these fourths and one of those fourths and be left with 3x to the 3/4. Okay, now here's another one. This time, sometimes they make you put them, remember a long time ago, we had an equation that was like f of x equals 2x plus 1. And then they'd say x equals 3. So you wrote f of 3 equals 2 times 3 plus 1, and you solved it. Remember that in Algebra 1? Well, now we're going to do that, but instead of substituting a 3, we can substitute in the other equation. So f of x equals 3x to the negative 1, and I immediately wanted to shoot that portal gun and shove the x through the fraction bar to the denominator, so I did. I always get rid of negative exponents immediately. And then g of x equals 2x minus 1, and they want us to do f of g of x is how you read it. That means where there's an x here, we're going to put this equation. We're substituting this equation in for x. So now we have 3 over 2x minus 1. And that's all we do. It looks so fancy and it's so easy. And you get to do it in college too. Alright, so now we're going to do it the other way. G of f of x. So that means for this x, we're going to substitute 3 over x. So it's 2 times 3 over x minus 1. You multiply numerators, so 2 times 3 is 6x over 1. And then the last one, sometimes they'll make you substitute an equation into itself. I know, it's like the Chinese snake eating his own tail, right? Or is that Japanese? I don't know. So this time we're supposed to do f of x. So for x, we're going to substitute in 3 over x. And remember the rule I told you, I call it the Jesus rule of math, that if something is in the denominator of the denominator, it gets to move up to the numerator. And then you get 3x over 3, and 3 divided by 3 is 1, so the answer is x. Last, they ask us to make sure we know the domain for each one. What can x be? And what we're looking for is we don't want a 0 in the denominator. It breaks the universe, and we don't want to break the universe. So with this one, x cannot be a half, because if it was, a half times 2 is 1 minus 1 is 0. For this one, x can't be equal to 0 because you can't have 0 in the denominator. And for this one, x cannot be equal to 0 because it would end up, once again, with 0 in the denominator, but before I erased anything, it was just 3x, that's a 0 in the denominator. So it's all reals, but x is not equal to 0. Isn't that fun? Make sure you can do all of them in the book. Come back and we'll talk about something else. Math is great.